All right, Judges chapter 3. And this is really, for myself, where, as I was studying for these lessons, this is really where I think the Bible, in a sense, really opened up a lot more to me. And that is because in the book of Judges, it becomes very apparent as you're reading through this and studying this, that when you read narratives in the Bible, it kind of becomes easy to just look at it like it is only historical facts, like you're reading a history book. But the way God has it recorded in the Scriptures, it is recorded in such a way as to teach us a particular point. He's not just recording historical facts for us. He's recording it for us with a point in view. And so when we're reading the Bible, the Lord, everything that's written down, even the historical books, everything is written with trying to make a particular point. And in the book of Judges, that became very apparent for me. Because as we go through the book of Judges, and as we kind of looked at a little bit last week, Judges is explaining for us why it is that Israel does not have all the land that God promised to them. So in Joshua chapter 21, it says that God fulfilled His promise to the fathers, that He gave them all the land, all the promises were fulfilled. But yet, when you get into the book of Judges, and you go through the rest of the Old Testament, Israel never actually possesses all that God promised. Because what God promised was to go from the Mediterranean Sea all the way over to the Euphrates River, as far north as the Black Sea, as far south as the Nile River in Egypt. But Israel did not at the time possess all that land, nor have they ever possessed all that land. And so the book of Judges helps us understand why that is. It's because they failed to keep the covenant. Joshua 23 says, if you fail to keep the covenant, then I will no more drive out those nations, but I'll cause them to be thorns in your eyes. And so Judges helps us understand why Israel never possesses the land. But it also helps us understand why they had to have a king. And that's the biggest point of the book of Judges, is that in order for Israel to be united, in order for Israel to be faithful, they needed to have a righteous king. That's why there was no king greater than David. While David certainly was not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, he was the most righteous of their kings. And it's just after him, it goes immediately into division. Solomon was, as much as we would like him to have been a good, righteous man, he was a wicked and foolish king, even though he was the wisest man that ever lived. And as a result of that, his sons split the kingdom and divided the nation of Israel. And the north only had wicked kings, and in the south it was kind of, sometimes you had a good one, sometimes you had a bad one. And so this is all directed at that point, that nobody but a righteous king would be sufficient to lead the nation of Israel and keep them united. Because with all of these judges that we read about here in the book, it is designed to show that they were all insufficient to lead the nation. They were corrupt, and there had to be a righteous king. And so we looked last week at the kind of the prologue of the book. That was chapters 1 and 2. And chapters 1 and 2 really just explain what the book of Judges is going to be about and kind of gives us an overview of the book. But here in chapters 3 through 16, we have a section that focuses on narratives. And the narratives are arranged to show is the corruption of Israel's judges. That's what we have to get. I was talking to somebody this week, and they made mention of the fact, and this is how it was taught to me, or at least implied when I was growing up, is that these judges were righteous, godly men, and they just had some faults. And so sermons are preached on Gideon. And so if you want to know God's will, then you need to put out a fleece. And you need to give God a test and ask Him to show you a sign. And lessons are being taken from the life of Samson. You know, God did not intend for us to take any example from Samson or from Gideon or from Jephthah. I mean, is that what we're supposed to do? Lord, if you will give me the victory in this area, I will sacrifice whatever you want. Is that what we're supposed to do? No, the purpose of these illustrations is to show that these judges, while they led the people of Israel for a period of time, they were insufficient. They were not what Israel needed. They could not perform what Israel needed. And so several of the judges' ministries overlap. If you go to the very last page, again, I put this chart in there just to kind of help you see and understand the lifespan and how they overlap. And you'll notice at the beginning, in the blue there, you have Othniel and Ehud. Those are the first two judges. But then once you get to Deborah's ministry of judging and Gideon's ministry of judging overlap. They almost take place at the exact same time. And you also find that when you get over here in the red on the right there, Jephthah is the first one. He and Samson judge for a period of time at the same. And then Samson and Samuel judge at the same time. And so some of these overlap, but the reason they're given in the order that they are is they're showing the progression from being a very good judge with Othniel to going to okay with Deborah. Because is Deborah a man's name or a girl's name? It's a girl. Is a woman supposed to be judging and leading God's people? No. So while she did a good job with what she was doing, she wasn't supposed to be the one doing it. And so that's the point. The corruption was such in the land that God had to use a woman to do a man's job. It's not that a woman can't do it, is physically unable to do it. It's just, or incapable of doing it in a sense. It is just the fact that God did not ordain for women to have that position. But sometimes God has to choose the lesser of the two evils in a sense and go with what He can use. And at that time, it was a woman. But then when you go past Deborah, and then you get into Gideon, Jephthah, and Samson, and you get bad with Gideon, you get a little bit worse with Jephthah, and then you get really bad with Samson. And that's the point. It is showing us this progression, this slide into evil because the people have no king over them and they have rejected God from being their king. So the narratives recount the ongoing cycle of apostasy. And it's told to us in chapter 2, verses 11 and 19, that God would raise up a judge to deliver the people, and then they would, while that judge lived, they would do the right thing, but then after that judge died, then they would forsake the Lord, they would go into bondage. And so we have the cycle here. There's peace in the land. Israel serves the Lord. Israel does evil in the eyes of the Lord. Then God punishes them by allowing them to be enslaved. Then Israel cries out to the Lord. God raises up a judge. Israel is delivered. And then there's peace in the land, and they're being faithful to the Lord for a while. And you would think after the first time of doing this, that would be sufficient. Maybe we just shouldn't keep doing that. But for 350 years, this goes on before Samuel comes on the scene. I mean, it's just ridiculous what's going on. And so here's your first blank. There are a total of 12 judges that are mentioned in the book of Judges. Othniel, Ehud, Shamgar, Deborah, Gideon, Tola, Jair, Jephthah, Ibzan, Elon, Abdon, and Samson. And of those 12, only 6 are mentioned in connection with the 6 apostasies of Israel. And so the focus of the book of Judges is on those 6 judges and the apostasy that takes place, which we're going to look at. So each apostasy is signaled by the phrase, and the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. And each period of oppression was brought on directly by God. So let's look at these first 3 judges. These are basically portrayed as the good judges. So in chapter 3 here, we have Othniel. Othniel is the first of the judges. And so Israel's apostasy is characterized by idolatry. Notice in chapter 3, verse 5. And the children of Israel dwelt among the Canaanites, Hittites, and Amorites, and Perizzites, and Hivites, and Jebusites, and they took their daughters to be their wives. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? Bad idea. God specifically told them point blank, do not take their daughters to be your wives. Do not give your sons to be their husbands. And notice what happens. Took their daughters to be their wives and gave their daughters to their sons and served their gods. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord and forgat the Lord their God and served Balaam and the groves. Now the groves, that's another name for Ashtaroth. So this is, verse 8, therefore the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold him into the hand of Cushan-Rishathaim. Anybody else want to try? No. I actually looked up the pronunciation and put marks in my Bible so I could get it right. The king of Mesopotamia and the children of Israel served Cushan-Rishathaim 8 years. So, because of their idolatry, he allowed the king of Mesopotamia to rule over them. They were in servitude to him for 8 years. That's your blank there. And notice there, his name, Cushan-Rishathaim, means Cushan, the doubly wicked. So this isn't a good guy. His name tells us what his character is like. And Othniel is presented as the pattern for what the judges are supposed to be and what they were supposed to do. Notice here, verse 9. When the children of Israel cried unto the Lord raised up a deliverer to the children of Israel, who delivered them, even Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he judged Israel, and went out to war, and the Lord delivered Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia, into his hand, and his hand prevailed against Cushan-Rishathaim. And the land had rest 40 years, and Othniel, the son of Kenaz, died. So this is the purpose. The purpose of the judge was to be raised up, lead the children of Israel in war against their oppressor, and then overcome them and deliver them. That was the purpose. And you notice there in verse 10, it says that the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. And this is repeated with every one of the judges. And it's showing the real source of their power. It wasn't necessarily because any of them were good or had good qualities. It was simply because God needed a deliverer, and he put his Spirit upon them to enable them to accomplish that. Next we come to Ehud. Now Ehud, I really like, I like this guy. Mostly because he's left-handed. We left-handed people, we ought to stick together. Yeah, we got to stick together. Don't make fun of left-handed people. We're the only ones in our right mind. Yeah, I don't either. but he's left-handed, and that plays a very important part in his account. Notice here in verse 12, chapter 3, verse 12. And the children of Israel did evil again. So Othniel dies, and just like it says in chapter 2, when that judge died, then they went back to apostasy. Children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Israel. This guy's funny. Because they had done evil in the sight of the Lord. And he gathered unto him the children of Ammon and Amalek, and went and smote Israel, and possessed the city of palm trees. That's Jericho. So the children of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, 18 years. Let me see how far I'm supposed to read here. So they served 18 years. Let's notice here, and we'll read more of this in just a moment. Israel's apostasy is characterized by doing evil, which is code for being immoral. And the Lord gives him over in servitude to Moab for 18 years. And so the Lord raises up Ehud as the deliverer. Notice verse 15 here. But when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord raised them up a deliverer, Ehud, the son of Gera, a Benjamite, a man left-handed. Now, how many of you would think that that would be a significant detail? I mean, who really cares what hand the guy uses? But apparently it plays a pretty significant role in this account. Because the Lord doesn't just put words in there to put words in there. Everything's here on purpose. Now watch this, and I'll explain this as we go along. But this is very interesting how this plays out. This is a military tactic, choosing a left-handed man. And this is remarkable how the Lord does this. Verse 15, he's a man left-handed, and by him the children of Israel sent a present unto Eglon, the king of Moab. But Ehud made him a dagger, which had 2 edges, of a cubit length, and he did gird it under his raiment upon his right thigh. Now this is the key here, okay? So he's left-handed, so it's like a gun. Somebody who is left-handed, if they wear a strap, they're going to put the gun on the right side so they can reach over and grab it, because if you try this number, that's not going to work too well. And with a sword, and it's not just a little pocket knife, a cubit that's elbow to the fingertip. So he made this dagger with 2 edges. He's putting it on his right thigh so he can reach over and grab it. And it's underneath his robe, his coat. So he's going in and he's going to present this gift to the king. Now, how many of you know that a king is going to have some guards guarding him? Now watch how this goes. Verse 17, he brought the present unto Eglon, king of Moab, and Eglon was a very fat man. And when he had made an end to offer the present, he sent away the people that bear the present. So what happens here, and this is one of the things that is going on in this day, as people were always bringing gifts to the king. They were bringing money or tribute or some sort of a gift, any nation that they ruled over. It was a pretty steady stream of people. And what they would do is they would have guards that would guard the entrance, and as they would come in, they would pat them down on the left side because everybody is right-handed. So they would gird their sword, if they were trying to hide one, on the left thigh so they could just reach over and grab it if they were going to use it. So they would have people patting them down on the left side as they go in to make sure that they don't have a sword. Well, Ehud's left-handed. So he goes in with the sword on his right side. They're not looking at the right side because who in their right mind is left-handed? No sane person, for sure. So this is an easy win for them. So he goes in before the king. He brings the gift. After he's done presenting the gift, the people that helped him bring it in, he sends them all out. Now watch. Verse 19. But he himself turned again from the quarries that were by Gilgal and said, I have a secret errand unto the king, who said, keep silence. And all that stood by him went out from him. So this is going to be a private meeting, just Ehud and the king. I have a particular errand that I need to take up with you. So everybody goes out. The door is shut. This is a perfect opportunity. And so verse 20, Ehud came upon him, and he was sitting in his summer parlor, which he had for himself alone. And Ehud said, I have a message from God unto thee. And he arose out of his seat. And Ehud put forth his left hand, and took the dagger from his right thigh, and thrust it into his belly. And the haft also went in after the blade. This guy's big. It's kind of one of those things where it's practically swallowed up his sword once it went in. so that he could not draw the dagger out of his belly, and the dirt came out. That means he cut his colon open. Then Ehud went forth through the porch and shut the doors of the parlor upon him and locked them. When he was gone out, his servants came, and when they saw that, behold, the doors of the parlor were locked, they said, surely he covereth his feet in the summer chamber. That means he's using the toilet. They didn't have toilets like we do, so they would squat down, and so it caused their robe to cover the feet, and so that was the expression. And verse 25, and they tarried till they were ashamed. They kind of look at each other, well, he should be done by now. We've been out here quite a while. And behold, he opened not the door of the parlor, therefore they took a key and opened them, and behold, their Lord was fallen down dead on the earth. And Ehud escaped while they tarried, and passed beyond the quarries, and escaped unto Sarath. And it came to pass, when he was come, that he blew a trumpet in the mountain of Ephraim, and the children of Israel went down with him from the mount, and he before them. And he said unto them, follow after me, for the Lord hath delivered your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand. And they went down after him, and took the fords of Jordan toward Moab, and suffered not a man to pass over. This is funny. And they slew of Moab at the time about 10,000 men, all lusty, and all men of valor, and they escaped, not a man. Now, lusty, that's not a word we use too often. And by our way of using the word lust, you'd almost think, well, maybe these were good-looking guys. The word lusty actually means fat and greasy. And I was reading that this week, and I saw that, and immediately the picture came into my mind. You ever see those football commercials where you have those fat guys on the bleachers, and they have the war paint on their face, and the shirt off, and like a Viking helmet on, and they're all screaming, and you know good and well, these men have never picked up a football in their life, much less played football. And this is exactly the type of picture that came into my mind. All these fat men bouncing across a field. They were all lusty. They were all dirty fat men. That's the picture that's presented here. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel. And the land had rest 80 years or 80 years. So then that brings us to Deborah. This is the next cycle. Comes Deborah in chapter 4. Notice verse 1. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord when Ehud was dead. And the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, that reigned in Hazor, the captain of whose host was Sisera, which dwelt in Harosheth of the Gentiles. And the children of Israel cried unto the Lord, for he had 900 chariots of iron. And 20 years he mightily oppressed the children of Israel. And Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, she judged Israel at that time. And she dwelt under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in Mount Ephraim. And the children of Israel came up to her for judgment. And she sent and called Barak, the son of Abinoam, out of Kedesh Naphtali, and said unto him, hath not the Lord God of Israel commanded, saying, go and draw toward Mount Tabor, and take with thee 10,000 men of the children of Naphtali, and of the children of Zebulun. And I will draw unto thee to the river Kishon Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army, and his chariots, and his multitude, and I will deliver him into thine hand. And Barak said unto her, if thou wilt go with me, then I will go. But if thou wilt not go with me, then I will not go. Man, what a model military leader. And how well would that work? You have orders to go into battle. Well, if you'll go with me, then I'll go, but I'm not going to go without you. I mean, kind of a pansy is kind of the word that comes to my mind. You notice what she says, verse 9. She said, I will surely go with thee, notwithstanding the journey that thou takest shall not be for thine honor. For the Lord shall sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. And Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. So Barak's not going to get the honor for this. A woman's going to get the honor. So let's drop down to verse number 15. Lord discomfited Sisera and all his chariots and all his hosts with the edge of the sword before Barak, so that Sisera lighted down off his chariot and fled away on his feet. But Barak pursued after the chariots and after the host unto Harosheth of the Gentiles, and all the host of Sisera fell upon the edge of the sword, and there was not a man left. Howbeit Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Jael. Now this is a woman. I mean, she is a manly ma'am, I guess you could say, in a sense. I mean, this is, what is it? Northern Michigan, where the men are men and the women are too? Is that? Anybody else heard that? I've heard that. Okay. So this is Jael. And this is really interesting how this plays out. Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. For there was peace between Jabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Jael went out to meet Sisera and said unto him, Turn in, my lord, turn in to me. Fear not. And when he had turned in unto her into the tent, she covered him with a mantle. Isn't that sweet? Here, let me just get you a blanket, cover you up, make you all nice and cozy. Verse 19, he said unto her, Give me, I pray thee, a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. And she opened a bottle of milk. I mean, boy, she's just going above and beyond to make him comfortable. You know what warm milk does to you? It makes you tired. She's got a plan. And gave him drink and covered him. And he said unto her, Stand in the door of the tent, and it shall be, when any man doth come and inquire of thee, and say, Is there any man here? That thou shalt say, No. Then Jael, Heber's wife, took a nail of the tent, and took a hammer in her hand, and went softly unto him. I mean, that's how a woman should be, right? Soft-spoken, soft-walking. And smote the nail into his temples, and fastened it into the ground. And he was fast asleep and weary, so he died. And he woke up with the splitness headache of any man alive. But notice here, verse 22. And behold, as Barak pursued Sisera. Remember what Deborah told Barak. The honor is not going to be to you. The honor is going to go to a woman. And behold, as Barak pursued Sisera, Jael came out to meet him and said unto him, Come, and I will show thee the man whom thou seekest. And when he came into her tent, behold, Sisera lay dead, and the nail was in his temples. So God subdued on that day Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the children of Israel. And the hand of the children of Israel prospered and prevailed against Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they had destroyed Jabin, king of Canaan. And then the next chapter goes into how the people are praising Jael, and they write a song about her. And so the honor did not go to Barak. So once again, Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and gave them into servitude to the king of Canaan for 20 years. That's your blank there. And it's important to note that Barak is not a judge. He is a military leader. And now what goes on here with Deborah, and this is where we have to understand the point of the book of Judges, is to show this progression, this degenerate progression in the book of Judges. People will go to the book of Judges when you get this kind of debate going on between egalitarianism and complementarianism. And the egalitarians, they want the women to have every single right that a man does, and they can have any position that a man can have, and they can be the leaders, and they can be the governors and the rulers and all these things. Well, I wasn't going to say it. And so they'll come back and say, well, what about Deborah? It was never God's plan for a woman to be a military leader. Never was it God's plan. But this shows the moral degradation of the land, that there was a lack of male leadership, and so God had to use a woman in the place of a man. Now we come to the next three judges. And this is where we really begin the downhill slide from bad to worse. And so this brings us to Gideon. Let's notice here in chapter 6. Chapter 6, verse 1. The children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of Midian 7 years. And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel, and because the Midianites, the children of Israel, made them the dens which are in the mountains and caves and strongholds. And so it was when Israel had sown that the Midianites came up, and the Amalekites, and the children of the east, even they came up against them. And they encamped against them, and destroyed the increase of the earth, till thou come unto Gaza, and left no substance for Israel, neither sheep, nor ox, nor ass. And they came up with their cattle and their tents, and they came as grasshoppers for multitude, for both they and their camels were without number, and they entered into the land to destroy it. And Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites, and the children of Israel cried unto the Lord. And it came to pass, when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord because of the Midianites, that the Lord sent a prophet unto the children of Israel, which said unto them, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I brought you up from Egypt, and brought you forth out of the house of bondage, and I delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of all that oppressed you, and drave them out from before you, and gave you their land. I said unto you, I am the Lord your God, fear not the God of the Amorites, in whose land ye dwell. But ye have not obeyed my voice. And it's like God has this tone of, look at what I did. Why are you doing this? Why? This is because you didn't obey me. And so the children of Israel, again, here in your notes, did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Midianites for 7 years. Is that a blank on yours? Did I blank that one out? I forget. Okay, I forgot to. And that one's free then. Now, what we need to understand with Gideon is not presented to us as an example. Gideon is presented as a coward. That's your blank. Notice in chapter 6, verse 17. Well, let me ask this first. Why was God raising up Gideon? To deliver them from their oppressors. Now notice, watch what happens here. Verse number 17. Well, actually, verse 14. The Lord looked upon him and said, Go in this thy might, and thou shalt save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have not I sent thee? Now notice, verse 17. And he said to them, If now I have found grace in thy sight, then show me a sign that thou talkest with me. And so we know the whole situation there with the fleece. He puts it out one night, and if the fleece is dry and the ground is wet all around it, well, then I'll know. Well, it happens. And then another night, well, flip it around. Let's make the fleece, what did I say last? Make the fleece dry, wet, and the ground around it dry. And then I'll believe. Did Gideon really need to have that? Should he have had to have that? No. What's going on here is a lack of faith on the part of Gideon. That's exactly the way it is with us. It's kind of like a guy sits down beside you. Lord, is it your will for me to witness to this guy? If it's your will for me to witness to this guy, show me a sign. Why would we need to do that? He's already told us. Right? We don't need to ask for a sign. Nor does the Lord need to give us one. Notice down in verse 36. And Gideon said unto God, If thou wilt save Israel by mine hand, as thou hast said. Here's the fleece. Behold, I will put a fleece of wool in the floor, and if the dew be on the fleece only, and it be dry upon the earth beside, then shall I know that thou wilt save Israel by mine hand, as thou hast said. And it was so. And he rose up early on the morrow, and thrust the fleece together, and wringed out the dew of the fleece in a bowl full of water. And Gideon said unto God, Let not thine anger be hot against me. Notice, he knows that he's testing God. He's putting God to the test. Is that what we're supposed to do? What does Jesus say? It is written, Thou shalt not put the Lord thy God to the test. He says, I pray thee, but this once, with the fleece. Let it now be dry only upon the fleece, and upon all the ground let there be dew. And God did so that night, for it was dry upon the fleece only, and there was dew on all the ground. Notice in chapter 7, verse 9. And it came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, Arise, get thee down into the host, for I have delivered it into thine hand. But if thou fear to go down, go thou with Phurah, thy servant, down to the host, and thou shalt hear what they say, and afterward shall thine hands be strengthened to go down into the host. Then went he down with Phurah. So we see he's being presented as a coward. He's being presented as someone who does not trust God, and who later learns to trust the Lord and defeats the Midianites with 300 men. He defeats an entire army of thousands with only 300 men. Another problem Gideon had was his temper. That's your next blank there. He had a problem with his temper. Notice in chapter 8 and verse 4. And Gideon came to Jordan and passed over, he and 300 men that were with him, faint, yet pursuing them. And he said unto the men of Succoth, Give, I pray you, loaves of bread unto the people that follow me, for they be faint. And I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, king of Midian. And the princes of Succoth said, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thine hand, that we may give bread unto thine army? And Gideon said, Therefore, when the Lord hath delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into mine hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. And he went up thence to Penuel, and spake unto them likewise. And the men of Penuel answered him, as the men of Succoth had answered him. And he spake unto the men of Penuel, saying, When I come again in peace, I will break down this tower. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor, and their host with them, about 15,000 men, all that were left of all the host of the children of the east. For there fell 120,000 men that drew sword. And Gideon went up by the way of them that dwelt in tents on the east of Nobah and Jogbeah, and smote the host, for the host was secure. And when Zebah and Zalmunna fled, he pursued after them, and took the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and discomfited all the host. And Gideon the son of Joash returned from battle before the sun was up, and caught a young man of the men of Succoth, and inquired of him, and described unto him the princes of Succoth, and the elders thereof, even 70 men. And he came unto the men of Succoth, and said, Behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, with whom ye did upbraid me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thine hand, that we should give bread unto thy men that are weary? And he took the elders of the city, and thorns of the wilderness, and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth. What does he mean by that? You ever use that phrase, somebody got schooled, or I'm going to learn you a lesson? That's exactly what he's saying right here. He taught the men of Succoth. And he beat down the tower of Penuel and slew the men of the city. He had a temper. He was a very angry man. And then later he makes an idol. And the people worship it in chapter 8, verse 22-27. After Gideon's victory, he makes what is that? Ephod. He makes an ephod of gold. He gets the gold from all the people, their earrings and such, melts it down, makes an ephod. Now, what exactly is an ephod? Some people have different opinions. The ephod is not, the way it's used for Gideon, is not necessarily a belt, as much as it is like a vest that's put over the shoulders. It's something that stands upright. And the people worship this. It becomes an idol. Notice verse 27, Gideon made an ephod thereof and put it in the city, even in Ophrah. And all Israel went thither a-whoring after it, which thing became a snare unto Gideon and to his house. So not only did he make this idol, But he also worshipped this idol along with the children of Israel. Now notice down to verse 23. Or back to verse number 23. It says, Gideon said unto them, the people come to him, they want Gideon to rule. And Gideon said unto them, I will not rule over you, neither shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you. Now that's a key statement there. The Lord shall rule over you. So when we get to chapter 17 through 21, it states in there several times, there was no king in Israel, and every man did that which was right in his own eyes. What does that mean that there was no king in Israel? It's not just that there was no human monarch. It means that they had completely rejected the Lord from being king over them. And this is stated again in 2 Samuel chapter 8 and verse 7. 1 Samuel chapter 8 and verse 7, where Samuel is going to anoint Saul to be king. And God says that to Samuel. They have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being a king over them. They had entirely rejected the Lord. That's why they keep going into idolatry. And the point here is that when we are told there is no king, it is not simply meaning a human monarchy. It means they have forsaken the Lord. Now, the account of Gideon really proves to be a pivotal narrative, because Gideon says, I will not rule over you, neither will my son rule over you. But when we look here in chapter 9, we find that the people take his son Abimelech, and they make him a king, and he rules for a very short period of time. And notice chapter 9 and verse 5. It says, And he went unto his father's house at Ophrah, and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal. That's another name for Gideon. Being 70 persons, upon one stone. Notwithstanding, yet Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. And all the men of Shechem gathered together, and all the house of Millo, and went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. Now drop down to verse number 50. Verse number 50, Then went Abimelech to Thebez, and encamped against Thebez, and took it. But there was a strong tower within the city, and thither fled all the men and women, and all they of the city, and shut it to them, and gat them up to the top of the tower. And Abimelech came unto the tower, and fought against it, and went hard unto the door of the tower to burn it with fire. And a certain woman cast a piece of a millstone upon Abimelech's head, and all to break his skull. Then he called hastily unto the young man his armor-bearer, and said unto him, Draw thy sword, and slay me, that men say not of me, A woman slew him. And his young man thrust him through, and he died. And when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they departed every man unto his place. So this woman casts a stone down, it breaks his skull, he's dying. I don't want to be killed by a woman, you kill me. And once he's dead, everybody's just like, oh, okay, well, let's go home. That was good while it lasted, now we're all done. And so that really proves to be a pivotal point. You know what, let's stop there. We'll finish this up next week. Jephthah's kind of fun to look at, so I want to take my time looking at that. Father, thank you for the time you've given to us. Thank you for your goodness, and thank you for the Word of God. Pray that you help us be faithful students and to learn how to understand the Bible and to apply it to our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.